I was 7 years old the first time I understood what I was. Not what I was supposed to be. What I was. The other pups had shifted by then. Little wolves tumbling over each other in the clearing behind the pack house, clumsy and bright-eyed, their fur catching the late afternoon sun. I stood at the tree line and watched them, waiting for something inside me to answer. It never did. My mother found me there, still in my human skin, hands pressed flat against my stomach like I could reach inside and wake whatever was sleeping. She knelt beside me in the grass and took my face in both hands. "Not yet," she said softly. "Some gifts come slowly, Sheila. That doesn't make them lesser." I believed her then. I believed her for a long time. By the time I was 12, the whispers had started. Not loud enough for my father to punish. Just quiet enough to follow me everywhere. "Did you see? Still hasn't shifted. Her mother keeps making excuses. Alpha Nelson must be so ashamed." I learned to walk with my chin up. To answer questions before they were asked. To fill every silence before it could be used against me. I became very good at performing normalcy, smiling at pack gatherings, volunteering for training runs I could only complete on 2 legs, laughing when the other unmated wolves teased me like it didn't carve something out of my chest every single time. My mother never stopped believing. She died when I was 16, still certain my wolf was coming. She never got to see that she was wrong. At 22, I was the oldest unshifted wolf in recorded pack history. Alpha Nelson, my father, didn't announce it. He didn't have to. The pack knew. The visiting alphas knew. Anyone who spent more than 5 minutes within our territory knew, because people talked, and shame traveled faster than any wolf ever could. He had stopped looking at me the way fathers look at daughters somewhere around my 18th birthday. Now when his eyes found me, they moved on quickly, like looking too long at something broken might make the damage contagious. I had 3 duties in the Marple pack. Stay quiet. Stay useful. Stay out of sight. I did all 3 without complaint. But when the royal mating ceremony was announced, when the scroll arrived at our pack house sealed with the king's crest, when the whole territory came alive with something electric and hopeful, something in me refused to be quiet. Every unmated wolf over 18, the scroll read. By order of Alpha King Chester Crawford, no wolf shall be excluded from the right of the sacred bond. No wolf shall be excluded. I read those words 4 times. Then I folded the scroll carefully along its original crease, set it back on my father's desk exactly as I found it, and went to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, and for the first time in years I let myself want something. Just one night. One chance to stand beneath the moon with every other unmated wolf and feel. Even if nothing answered, even if the bond never came, like I belonged somewhere. Was that so much to ask? I didn't know then what my father's answer would be. I didn't know that he had already decided. That by morning, the wanting would cost me more than silence ever had. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The ceremony was still 3 days away. And for 3 days I still had something I hadn't had in a long time. Hope. Chapter 2: The Royal Summons. The news spread through the pack like wildfire through dry grass. Fast. Hungry. Unstoppable. By breakfast, every wolf in the Marple territory knew about the ceremony. By midday, the pack house was loud with it. Voices layered over voices, she-wolves comparing dresses in the hallways, unmated males standing taller than usual, shoulders back, chests open, already performing for an audience that hadn't arrived yet. I watched it all from the kitchen doorway, a mug of tea warming my hands. They were beautiful when they had something to hope for. My pack. Even the ones who had made my childhood quietly miserable, even they were beautiful like this, lit up from the inside, reaching toward something just beyond their fingertips. I understood the feeling. That was the problem. The scroll had come from the royal territory on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, Alpha Nelson had gathered the pack in the great hall to read it aloud. I stood near the back, close enough to hear, far enough to disappear if needed. It was a position I had perfected over years of practice. His voice carried the words without warmth, the way he read everything, like language was a tool and not a gift. By decree of Alpha King Chester Crawford, the royal mating ceremony will be held on the night of the full moon. All unmated wolves of eligible age are summoned to the royal grounds. The bond is sacred. The king's court will bear witness. No eligible wolf shall be turned away. The hall erupted. I pressed my back against the wall and let the sound wash over me. The cheers, the nervous laughter, someone crying softly near the front. A she-wolf named Dana grabbed her sister's hands and the two of them spun in a small, ridiculous circle that made something ache behind my ribs. No eligible wolf shall be turned away. The king's own words. I repeated them to myself like a prayer I wasn't sure I deserved to speak. For 3 days I let myself pretend. I helped the other she-wolves press their ceremonial gowns and said nothing when they debated which sense the alpha king might favor. I braided Dana's hair the morning before the ceremony, while she talked breathlessly about destiny and moon bonds, and what it would feel like when it finally happened. "Do you think it hurts?" she asked. "When the bond clicks into place?" "I think it probably feels like relief," I said quietly. She turned to look at me, and for a moment something soft crossed her face. An almost apology. The kind people offer when they remember they're happy in front of someone who has very little reason to be. "You should come, Sheila," she said. "You have just as much right as anyone." I smiled and said nothing, but something in me had already decided. That night I stood outside my father's study for a long time before I knocked. The firelight bled gold beneath the door. I could hear him inside. The slow turn of a page, the particular silence of a man comfortable in his own authority. I knocked twice. "Come." I opened the door and stepped inside. He was seated behind his desk, a ledger open before him, reading glasses low on his nose. He didn't look up immediately. When he did, his expression didn't change. "Sheila." Just my name. Flat and careful. The way you'd acknowledge furniture that had moved slightly out of place. I stood straight. "I want to attend the ceremony," I said. "The king's decree includes all unmated wolves. I am unmated. I would like to go." My father closed the ledger slowly. He removed his glasses, and the way he looked at me then, patient, almost pitying, told me everything before he said a single word. "Chapter through the ban." He didn't answer right away. That was its own kind of cruelty. Alpha Nelson set his glasses on the desk with the quiet precision of a man who had never once made a decision in haste. He folded his hands. He looked at me the way you look at something you've already made up your mind about, not considering, just confirming. The fire crackled between us. "You want to attend," he said finally. Not a question. A repetition. Like he was testing how the words sounded out loud and finding them lacking. "The king's decree. I know what the decree says." His voice wasn't raised. It never was. Alpha Nelson Marple had never needed volume to make a room feel smaller. He had a quieter way of taking up all the air. "The decree," he continued, "was written for wolves." The word landed exactly the way he intended it to. I didn't flinch. I had learned long ago that flinching only encouraged him. "I am a wolf," I said. "Unshifted is not the same as." "It is the same." He said it simply, cleanly, like fact. In the eyes of the royal court, in the eyes of every alpha who will be present that night, an unshifted wolf is not a wolf. She is a question no one wants to answer. He paused. "And I will not bring that question before the Alpha King." My throat tightened. "You would be embarrassed," I said quietly. "That's what this is." Something moved behind his eyes. Not guilt. I had stopped expecting guilt from him years ago. Something closer to impatience. "I would be practical," he said. "As someone in this family must be." I thought of my mother then, kneeling in the grass beside me, hands warm on my face. Some gifts come slowly. Her certainty had been the only soft thing in this house, and when she died she took it with her, and my father had never once tried to replace it. I wondered sometimes if he had loved her, if losing her had made him harder, or if he had always been this way and she had simply hidden it from me for as long as she could. I would never know. And standing in his study, I understood that I would never get anything from him that resembled softness again. "The king's decree says no eligible wolf shall be turned away," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. "If you forbid me from attending, you are violating a royal order." His eyes sharpened. For one brief moment I thought I had found the edge of something, a boundary even he wouldn't cross. Then he leaned back in his chair, and the moment passed. "The decree was issued to Pax," he said. "I am this Pax Alpha. What happens within our territory, within our walls, within our family, that falls to my judgment. He held my gaze. And my judgment is final. You can't. You will not attend. Each word separate. Deliberate. A door closing on everyone. You will remain here on the night of the ceremony. You will not travel to the royal grounds. You will not present yourself before the king or his court. He picked his glasses back up. Opened the ledger. We will not speak of this again. He looked back down at the page. I was dismissed. I don't remember walking back to my room. I remember sitting on the floor beside my bed because the mattress felt too far away and the floor was solid and I needed something solid right then. I remember pressing my palm flat against my sternum the way I had as a child in the clearing, reaching for something sleeping inside me. I remember the silence that answered. Same as always. The only difference was that this time I didn't tell myself it was coming. Chapter for the night of exile. The pack house emptied slowly. That was the worst part. Not the silence that came after, but the before. The long drawn-out process of watching everyone prepare to leave for the place I was forbidden to go. The sounds of it moving through the walls like water. Heels on hardwood. Perfume drifting under doors. Voices bright with anticipation, layered and overlapping. The whole building humming with something I was not allowed to be part of. I sat on my bedroom floor with my back against the bed and listened to all of it. Dana passed my door twice. The second time she slowed and I heard her footsteps hesitate just outside. A pause so small most people would have missed it. I had spent enough years listening for small things to catch it easily. She didn't knock. After a moment, her footsteps continued down the hall. I didn't blame her. There was nothing she could have said that would have helped, and we both knew it. Comfort offered through a closed door wasn't really comfort. It was just witness. And I had enough of that already. Enough people who saw exactly what was happening and kept walking anyway. By 8 o'clock the house was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The other kind. The kind that has a shape to it. That presses against you from all sides and reminds you precisely what's missing. I stood at my window and watched the convoy leave. Black vehicles moving slowly down the territory road. Headlights cutting through the dark. My father's car at the front, of course at the front. And behind it the others one after another. Until the road was empty and the tree line swallowed the last of the light. Gone. All of them gone. And I was still here. I tried to read. I couldn't. I tried to sleep. My body refused. I ended up in the kitchen, sitting at the long wooden table in the dark with a glass of water I didn't drink, staring at the grain of the wood like it owed me something. The ceremony would be starting soon. I knew the order of it. Everyone did, the processional, the blessing, the moment when the Alpha King took his place and the unmated wolves were brought forward. And the moon did whatever the moon did. And the bonds began to form, quiet and electric and inevitable as gravity. No wolf is forgotten, the elders always said. I pressed my thumbnail into the edge of the table. Every wolf finds their mate. I had believed that once. Held it close the way my mother had taught me to, like something precious and fragile that needed protecting. But beliefs are not built for the kind of pressure that years of silence applies to them. They crack slowly, then all at once. And sitting alone in that dark kitchen while the rest of my pack stood beneath the full moon waiting for destiny, I felt the last of it go. Not dramatically. There was no sound to it. No great unraveling. Just a quiet final settling. Like a door that had been left slightly ajar for 22 years, finally, gently closing. I put my head down on my arms. I didn't mean to cry. I was so certain I was past it, that my father had already taken the last thing from me worth grieving. But grief doesn't negotiate, and it doesn't care about your certainty. It arrives when it arrives. So I let it come. In the empty kitchen in the dark with no one watching and no performance required, I let myself fall completely apart. Just once. Just tonight. Tomorrow I would be whatever I had always been, quiet, useful, invisible. But tonight I let myself mourn the life I had almost believed I deserved. Chapter 5. The ceremony begins. The royal grounds were nothing like the stories. They were better. The approach alone stretched nearly half a mile. A long ceremonial path flanked by ancient oaks, their trunks wrapped in white ribbon and moonflower vines that glowed faintly silver in the dark. Torches burned at even intervals, their flames unnaturally still, like even the wind had been asked to hold its breath tonight. Beyond the tree line, the grounds opened into something vast and breathtaking. A natural amphitheater carved by land and time. the earth sloping gently downward toward a raised stone platform at the center. The platform was old, older than any pack, older than any king. The kind of old that makes the air around it feel heavier, like the ground itself remembers everything that has ever happened on it. Wolves filled the slopes in every direction. Hundreds of them, gathered from territories across the kingdom. They stood in quiet clusters, faces lifted toward the moon, dressed in ceremonial white and silver and deep midnight blue. The energy among them was unlike anything found in ordinary pack gatherings, something steadier than excitement, something closer to reverence. This was sacred ground. Everyone present understood that without being told. At the far edge of the stone platform, elevated slightly above the rest, stood the Alpha King's court. His advisors, his generals, his inner circle, assembled in a precise formation that communicated power without a single word. And at the center of it, still and watchful and unlike anyone else present, stood Chester Crawford, the Alpha King. He was not what most imagine when they pictured royalty. There was no performance in him, no calculated display of authority. He didn't need it. Power like his didn't announce itself, it simply existed the way gravity exists, the way winter exists, undeniable and complete. He was tall, dark-haired. His ceremonial clothing was simpler than those around him, as if he knew that ornamentation would only distract from what he already was. His eyes moved slowly across the gathered wolves below, not scanning, not searching, just watching, present in the particular way that very few people ever learn to be. Those closest to him stood a half step back without seeming to realize it. That kind of space doesn't get negotiated. It gets recognized. The High Elder approached the platform as the moon reached its peak. She was ancient, small and white-haired and carrying herself with the particular dignity of someone who has outlived every reason to be afraid. She raised both hands, and the gathered wolves fell silent so quickly it felt like a held breath made collective. "Children of the moon," she began, her voice carrying impossible distances across the still air. "We gather as we have gathered for 10,000 years. Under her light. In her name. To honor the bond she wove into our blood before memory began." The words settled over the crowd like something physical. Tonight, the goddess does not make mistakes. Tonight, every soul present is exactly where they are meant to be. A soft sound moved through the wolves. Not quite agreement. Something deeper than that. Acceptance. Surrender. The particular piece of people who believe completely in something larger than themselves. The High Elder lowered her hands. "Let the ceremony begin." And it did. The processional started. Wolves moving forward in slow, deliberate order. Names called one by one from the royal scroll. The Alpha King watched from the platform, still and unreadable, his eyes tracing each wolf who stepped forward with the same careful attention. He did not look bored. He did not look impatient. He looked more than anything like a man waiting for something specific. Like a man who already knew that what he was looking for had not yet arrived. Chapter 6: The Missing Name. The scroll was long. The royal attendant, a young wolf in formal white, hand-steady voice trained to carry, had been reading names for nearly 40 minutes. Each name called forward produced the same quiet ritual. The wolf stepped onto the sacred ground. The High Elder placed both hands briefly on their shoulders. They stood beneath the moon. Sometimes something happened. A soft inhale from somewhere in the crowd. Two wolves turning toward each other with the slow inevitability of a tide coming in. Like they hadn't chosen to move at all. Like something older than choice had simply rearranged them. The bonds were forming. Quietly. Surely. One by one. Chester watched each one from the platform and felt nothing personal in any of them. Only the satisfaction of witnessing something functioning the way it was meant to. Order restored. Destinies honored. The goddess delivering on her oldest promise. He should have felt settled by now. He didn't. There was something at the edge of his awareness that he couldn't name. A low dissonance barely perceptible, like a string instrument tuned a fraction too loose. Not wrong enough to stop everything. Just wrong enough to be impossible to ignore. He had felt it since the ceremony began. He had been trying to locate its source ever since. The attendant turned to the next page of the scroll. Sheila Ballou Marple Pack. Chester's attention sharpened before the silence had fully registered. The attendant waited. The name hung in the air above the gathered wolves, unclaimed. Nothing moved. The attendant glanced up briefly, then back at the scroll. Protocol dictated 3 calls before marking an absence. He drew a measured breath. Sheila Baloo Marple Pack. Still nothing. Around the slopes, wolves shifted slightly. The particular discomfort of a crowd witnessing something that doesn't fit the expected shape of an evening. Murmur started at the edges, soft and careful, the way people speak when they're not yet sure whether what they're watching is minor or significant. The attendant prepared for the 3rd call. Chester raised one hand. The attendant stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. When the Alpha King raised his hand at a royal ceremony, everything ceased. It was not a rule anyone had needed to write down. It was simply understood, had been understood for as long as there had been an Alpha King to raise his hand. Chester stepped forward to the edge of the platform. His eyes moved to the section where the Marple Pack stood assembled, orderly, composed, dressed in their territory colors. Alpha Nelson Marple was near the front, as alphas always positioned themselves. His expression hadn't shifted. If anything, it had become very carefully still. Chester recognized that kind of stillness. He had seen it before on men who were hoping not to be looked at directly. It made him look directly. The name was called twice, Chester said. His voice carried without effort across the amphitheater. Where is Sheila Baloo? Alpha Nelson's chin lifted a fraction. She was unable to attend, my king. A personal matter. A personal matter. Chester repeated the words slowly. Not with anger. With the particular quality of a man testing the weight of something and finding it insufficient. On the night of a royal summons. Regrettable, Nelson said. But unavoidable. Chester held his gaze for a long moment. The dissonance he had been feeling since the ceremony began hadn't faded. It had sharpened. Whatever was pulling at the edge of his awareness, whatever string had been vibrating just slightly off all evening, it had a direction now. It was pulling away from this amphitheater, away from the torchlight and the sacred ground and the hundreds of wolves assembled exactly where they were supposed to be. It was pulling toward something, someone who wasn't here. And the longer he stood on that platform, the more certain he became. She should have been. Chapter 7. The King Stops Everything. Chester Crawford had halted wars with less certainty than this. He turned to his head attendant, a sharp-eyed wolf named Aldrich who had served the royal court for 2 decades and had learned, over those 2 decades, to read the king's intentions before they were spoken. Aldrich was already at his side. Find out where she is, Chester said quietly. Exactly where. And how long it would take to bring her here. Aldrich didn't ask questions. That was why Chester kept him close. He disappeared into the gathered court without a sound. Below the platform, the crowd had not resumed its quiet reverence. The atmosphere had shifted, imperceptibly at first, then unmistakably. Hundreds of wolves standing in the dark, all of them aware that something unscripted was happening, none of them certain what to do with that awareness. The processional had stopped. The High Elder stood with her hands folded, patient as stone, her ancient eyes moving between Chester and the section where the Marple Pack stood. Alpha Nelson had not moved. He was performing composure very well. Chester had to give him that. His shoulders were back, his expression arranged into something approximating respectful neutrality. But the stillness was too deliberate, too maintained. The stillness of a man holding a position rather than simply occupying one. Chester filed that away. Aldrich returned in less than 4 minutes. He leaned close and spoke in a low voice. Chester listened without his expression changing. When Aldrich finished, Chester was quiet for a moment. Then he turned back to face the ceremony grounds. We will pause, he said. Not loudly. He never needed to speak loudly. But the words reached every corner of the amphitheater with the clarity of something that had not been announced so much as simply declared. The way weather declares itself, without asking permission and without anticipating argument. The murmurs that had been building collapsed into silence. The High Elder's eyebrows rose a fraction. In 10,000 years of ceremony, Chester suspected no one had ever paused a royal mating under a full moon. The moon did not pause. The bonds did not pause. The goddess, by all accounts, did not pause. Chester paused anyway. He looked at Alpha Nelson. Your wolf was not unable to attend, he said. She was forbidden from attending. By you. It wasn't a question. Nelson's composure cracked slightly at the edges. Just slightly. My king, within my territory, pack matters are governed by. By pack law, Chester said. Yes. I know pack law. He descended the platform steps slowly, deliberately, until he stood on the same level as the gathered wolves. The crowd parted without being asked. I also know royal law. And royal law, my law, states that no eligible wolf shall be excluded from the sacred bond. He stopped a measured distance from Nelson. You excluded her. She is unshifted. Nelson's voice dropped, lowered by something that might have been shame if he were a different kind of man. She has no wolf. She is not. You do not get to decide what she is. Chester's voice remained even. That was the thing about real authority, it didn't need edges. It was simply present, filling all available space. That determination belongs to the goddess. Not to you. Nelson said nothing. Around him, the marple wolves had gone very still. Dana, standing 3 rows back, had her hand pressed over her mouth. Chester turned back to Aldrich. Send 2 of my personal guard to the Marple pack house, he said. Tell them the Alpha King requests Sheila Ballew's presence at the royal grounds. He paused. Tell them to use the word requests. I want her to know she has a choice. Because whatever was pulling at him across the dark in the distance, whatever string had been vibrating wrong all evening, it deserved to arrive with its dignity intact. He would not summon her like a subject. He would invite her like someone who should have been here all along. Chapter 8 Summoned before the throne. I heard the cars before I saw the lights. 2 sets of headlights moving up the territory road, slow and deliberate, the way vehicles move when they aren't in a hurry because they don't need to be. I was still at the kitchen table. I hadn't moved in a long time. The glass of water beside me had gone warm. I watched the lights through the window without getting up. For a moment I thought my father had come back early, that the ceremony had ended and the pack was returning, and I would need to arrange my face into something acceptable before anyone walked through the door. Then I saw the royal crest on the door panels. I stood up so quickly the chair scraped back against the floor. There were 2 of them. Large wolves in formal court attire, unhurried, carrying themselves with the particular ease of people who have never once doubted their right to be wherever they are. They knocked twice, not loudly, but with a solidity that suggested the door had better answer. I opened it before I had fully decided to. The one on the left spoke first. Sheila Ballew? My voice came out steadier than I expected. Yes. The Alpha King requests your presence at the royal grounds. He paused, and I understood the pause was intentional, that someone had specifically told him what to say next. It is a request, not a command. You are free to decline. I stared at him. The Alpha King. Chester Crawford had stopped his ceremony, the sacred, ancient, moon-blessed ceremony, and sent his personal guard to a dark pack house at the edge of nowhere to ask if I would please consider attending. Requests, they'd said. Like I had a choice worth honoring. Like I was someone whose choice mattered. Something cracked open in the center of my chest. Not painfully. The way ice cracks in early spring. A sound that means something frozen is finally beginning to move. Give me a moment, I said. I didn't change my clothes. There was no time and nothing ceremonial in my wardrobe anyway. My father had seen no reason to prepare me for a night he'd already decided I wouldn't attend. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for exactly 3 seconds. Red-rimmed eyes. Hair pulled back loosely. A girl who had spent the evening falling apart on a kitchen floor. I looked exactly like what I was. I decided that was enough. The royal grounds were 40 minutes away. I sat in the back of the vehicle and watched the dark countryside move past the window, and tried not to think about what I was driving toward. Tried not to construct expectations that could be dismantled. Tried to keep myself small and quiet and protected the way I had learned to do. It didn't entirely work. The gates of the royal grounds were open when we arrived. The ceremonial path, those ancient oaks wrapped in moonflower vines, was exactly as the stories had described it, lit and still and impossibly beautiful, and walking it felt like moving through someone else's dream. The crowd parted as I entered the amphitheater. Hundreds of faces turning. The silence already present before I fully understood I was the reason for it. I kept my chin up. I kept walking. I did not look for my father's face among the marple wolves, because I knew what I would find there and I didn't want it to touch me. Not tonight. I looked forward, at the stone platform, at the man standing at its edge, watching me cross the sacred ground toward him with an expression I didn't yet have language for. The Alpha King. And then, between one step and the next, something inside me ignited. Not slowly, not gently, like a match dropped into something that had been waiting to burn for 22 years. My wolf woke up. Chapter 9: The Chosen Wolf. She felt it the moment I did. I know that now. I could see it in the way she stopped walking, not stumbling, not faltering, but stopping, the way you stop when something so significant happens to your body that your body simply needs a moment to catch up with it. The sacred ground went absolutely silent. Even the torches seemed to hold still. I descended the platform steps without thinking. My advisors would say later that I moved faster than they had ever seen me move, that I crossed the distance between us in seconds, that the crowd parted so quickly it looked rehearsed. I don't remember any of that. I only remember her face. The way her eyes, wide and searching and still wet at the edges from a night of grieving alone, found mine and stayed there. Like she recognized something. Like she had been looking for it her entire life without knowing what it was called. I stopped 2 feet from her. The bond was undeniable now. Not subtle. Not a quiet pull or a gentle suggestion. It was absolute, the kind of certainty that makes every previous uncertainty feel like preparation. Like every year of waiting, every silence, every moment of almost had been building toward this single point of arrival. Sheila Ballou, I said. Her chin lifted. Even now, even here, shaking slightly, wolf newly woken, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses, she lifted her chin. Alpha King, she said. I almost smiled. Chester, I said. Tonight, just Chester. Something moved across her face. Too many things at once for any of them to be named properly. But underneath all of it, underneath the shock and the disbelief and the careful wall she had spent years learning to build, I saw it. Relief. The particular relief of someone who had finally, after a very long time, been found. I offered her my hand. She looked at it for exactly 1 breath. Then she took it. The reaction moved through the crowd in waves. First silence. Then a sound that wasn't quite a gasp and wasn't quite a cheer. Something between the two, the noise a gathering makes when it witnesses something it will spend the rest of its life describing to people who weren't there. I heard Dana somewhere in the crowd crying openly. I heard Alpha Nelson say nothing at all. I did not look at him. I would deal with Nelson Marple in the morning, through proper channels, with the full weight